Pride and Prejudice, chapter 3, 6th video. I think the last one of this chapter. First, as usual, some review. Question: how many dances did Mr. Bingley have with Jane? Answer: it depends on the way you count it, right? Two groups of 2. So 4 dances, 2 groups of 2. Question: what were Mr. Bingley's expectations about the party? Answer: he had rather hoped that his wife would be disappointed about it all, right? I don't have any other questions, so let's continue. If he had had any compassion for me, cried her husband impatiently, he would not have danced half so much. He's talking about Mr. Bingley. And who is speaking here is Mr. Bennett. For God's sake, say no more of his partners. Oh, that he had sprained his ankle in the first dance. Okay. So, what does Mr. Bennet have to do with Mr. Bingley? So, if Mr. Bingley had some compassion for Mr. Bennet, he would not have danced half of the dances he did. Why? Stop the video, that's important. I hope every time I ask you questions, you stop the video, but this is very important, and explain it. Again, he is being witty here, right? Because if Mr. Bingley hadn't danced so many times, then Mr. Bennet's wife wouldn't have so much to talk about, okay? And then of course the husband wouldn't be suffering so much now, okay? Look, there's an interesting way to put things here in the end of this paragraph. Oh, that he had sprained his ankle in the first dance. Oh, that he had. Here, the idea is, I wish he had. Alright? Oh, I wish he had sprained. Oh, my dear, continued Mrs. Bennet, I am quite delighted with him. He is so excessively handsome, and his sisters are charming women. I never in my life saw anything more elegant than their dresses. I dare say the lace upon Mrs. Hurst's gown. Sorry, I didn't put in our Quizlet the word gown. Look, people talk about gown for sleeping. I'm going to insert it there in our list, all right? But when we are talking about for sleeping, like a kind of robe, all right? But in a situation like this, is a long, usually formal woman's dress, right? I put a picture of a lady with a beautiful, I don't know if it's that beautiful, kind of beautiful gown, okay? I dare say the lace upon Mrs. Hurst's gown. Here she was interrupted again. Mr. Bennet protested against any description of finery. Here's another important word. I put on our list there a beautiful dress, you know, full of, you know, beautiful things. All right, so but finery is beautiful clothes for a special occasion. One possible meaning for finery. So Mr. Bennet protested against any description of a finery. She was therefore obliged to seek, to look for, right? To seek another branch of the subject, and related with much bitterness of spirit and some exaggeration my intonation was not nice. Seek another branch of the subject and related with much bitterness of spirit and some exaggeration the shocking rudeness of Mr. Darcy. But I can assure you, she added, that Lizzy does not lose much by not suiting his fancy. Let me interrupt here for fancy. Look, fancy can mean some things, right? The first one, and probably the most common one, is the one I would like to set apart. There's like a fancy party, right? A fancy party, you know, is like expensive and etc. Okay. But fancy can mean other things, and those things are related to this. Fancy can be a formal and more British way of saying would you like, okay? Fancy a cup of tea, right? Do you fancy a cup of tea, all right? So that's the first meaning I want to show here. I don't know if you have ever watched a movie called Notting Hill. It's a British movie with Julia Roberts and Hugh Grant, maybe. It's a very nice actor, I like him. There is a scene when the guy is giving some suggestions to his friend about t-shirts, and then there is a phrase there with fancy. If you remember the movie, try to remember that scene, okay? If you haven't watched the movie, watch it. Fancy can also mean imagination, okay? Let me see if I have a sentence here. No, I don't. But for example, he always fancies himself living in, I don't know, in the United States, okay? And because of that, fancy can also mean things you desire, right? So like what you wish. So Lizzy does not lose much by not suiting, right, fitting, okay, his fancy. Just one more thing, keep in mind, you can get, you're choosing clothes, for example, and your friend is there, so you get a dress, and then you get another one, and you show to your friend both of them, and you ask them, which one, in your opinion, suits me better? Which one suits me better? Okay? So, this idea of fit well. Okay, so she does not lose much by not suiting his fancy, for he is a most disagreeable, horrid man, and not at all worth pleasing. Keep in mind that in our story here, it's very common to hear a most disagreeable, alright? Instead of the most disagreeable, okay? Most here is being used as an intensifier. It's a kind of less used, no, not kind of, it's a much less used, much less used context for most, right? So he's not the most disagreeable person in the world, alright? He is very disagreeable. He's a most disagreeable. Horrid man, not all worth pleasing. So high and so conceited that there was no enduring it. Nobody could tolerate it, because nobody could put up with, his opinion of himself. He's very conceited, right? He's very stuck up. He walked here and he walked there, fancying himself so great. So here we have the other meaning I told you, right? Fancying himself so great. Not handsome enough to dance with. I wish you had been there, my dear, to have given him one of your set-downs. Set-downs, take a look, I put it in our list there. The humbling of a person by action or words, especially by remarks. Okay, so I say something funny and the person will feel bad, funny or very smart, and the person will feel bad, and the person will feel small, okay, humble. And of course you can imagine, right, Mr. Bennett, giving people set downs. So I wish you had been there, my dear, to have given him one of your set downs. I quite detest the man.